The 2D platformer is probably my favourite genre, so it's kind of personal for me that 3D came along and ruined everything. But there are still some 2D platformers coming out, and NyxQuest is ample proof that that is a good thing. NyxQuest has a Greek mythology setting, chronicling the adventure of Nyx, a winged goddess who goes in search of her mortal friend Icarus after he goes missing. Arriving in the mortal realm, she discovers the sun god Helios has grown tired of humans and has decided to burn them off the face of the earth. Nyx, aided by some of the better known gods, goes off to set everything right. As with virtually all 2D platformers, it's a very lightweight story, but it carries the game well. Probably the most striking thing about the way the game is told is that there's no voice acting. I loathe the kinds of voices usually used in games like these, so I was pleasantly surprised during the beautiful opening cinematic that I could simply imagine whatever voice I wanted. Some of the English translation is kind of mental, as the developers are Spanish, but rather than detracting from the experience, it just adds to the charm, and for the most part it is really good anyway. Nyx starts the game with just two basic abilities, jumping and gliding. By flapping her wings, she has the ability to jump while in the air up to 5 times, and likewise her ability to glide like Razio from Soul Reaver is also on a limited meter. These two abilities give the levels a lot of real estate, vertically as well as horizontally, and it makes for some very interesting level design. One annoying issue with the platforming is that both the jump and glide meters are in the top left corner of the screen, and keeping an eye on your character and on your meters at the same time is only possible by rapidly darting your eyes back and forth, which is no fun at all. It would probably have been better to have these meters appear over the character or to somehow be represented through the character's animations. But it's a minor complaint, as you'll quickly just get used to the feel of how long you can glide and to count off your 5 jumps. But that first half an hour is a little unfriendly, particularly as you're new to the game at that point. Thanks to that pesky sun god, the sands of Greece are burning hot and you have to avoid them by standing on rocks and ruined columns and the like. The sand in effect works like the bottomless pit death trap common in platformers, with the twist that it injures rather than kills you. This may perhaps sound like it makes the game too easy, but the sands are just one of each level's many hazards, and how few safe platforms there are makes for some fairly intense precision platforming. Other hazards in the game include crushing blocks, wooden spikes, channels of wind that seek to blow you into other hazards, fireballs, collapsing ceilings, orbs that home in on you if you get too close to them, and, as the game says, difficulty or movement. And of course good old-fashioned enemies like Harpy. There are only a couple of enemy types in the game, meaning you don't have to learn or adapt to different behaviour patterns, which is unfortunate as that usually does a lot to keep you on your toes in platformers. Nyx has no innate ability to fight her enemies until late in the game. Headbopping will just get you killed, so evasion is the way to play. Nyx eventually acquires new abilities that let her fight, but the focus is firmly on avoiding enemies for most of the game, which is a welcome change to the convention, and when combat eventually does come, you're ready for it. The abilities you collect change the game quite a bit as you play, keeping the gameplay pretty fresh. Your first ability is object manipulation. You're limited to mostly only moving stone blocks. How freely you can move objects depends on their weight, with little blocks being fairly easy to pick up and carry around even if you're standing on them, while heavier objects like huge slabs can only be dragged along the ground. This idea is used in fairly predictable ways, stacking boxes to stand on to reach higher areas, or carrying a box with you through an environment to ultimately use as a key, and games like Trine have already done the idea better, but it's still a decent addition. You're also able to hold huge crushing blocks in place, but not actually move them. As you're limited to grabbing one at a time, this leads to some fairly tense moments as you grab the first block and run underneath it, then grab the second and quickly run under it before the first crushes you. But the best application of the object manipulation is probably when you have a huge platform too heavy to carry, and you have to stand on it and drag it through the environment, avoiding overhead obstacles like fountains of sand with well-timed drags. Rather than simply adding to the basic platforming mechanics, platform dragging completely changes them, and it's good stuff, and it's wisely not overused. All of this adds up to some really fun and often fairly unorthodox platforming. Although there's both unlimited lives and a fairly generous health bar element, the checkpoints are quite spread out, so the game strikes a good balance of enabling you and punishing your failures. You also gain the ability to grab hold of fire and drag it around. These moments play like the board game Operation. Don't touch the sides or the fire extinguishers, and you have to go back to the source and grab another fireball. Fire manipulation is mostly used as a key device, but it's occasionally optionally used to kill enemies. Grabbing fireballs being shot at you and dragging them out of the way is pretty intense, especially if you're juggling other elements like dragging a platform and avoiding enemies at the same time. But just dragging an inert fireball through an environment to use as a key is fairly dull. Around the halfway point, you pick up the ability to manipulate wind, which blows out of special wall fixtures. Using simple click and drag motions, you can change the route of the wind, which you can then use to blow you around. It's an idea that works fairly well and makes you think differently about the way levels are designed, but the fact that you can always stand on a safe platform and take your time deciding where to draw the wind makes it a very passive gameplay element. There's no active danger and virtually no intellectual process involved. I think being able to actually create your own sources of wind, a little like the bubble levels in Super Mario Galaxy, would have been a better application of this idea, as it would make it an integral element of the platforming, which opens up a lot of level design ideas. As it exists in the game, you're mostly standing around on platforms and dragging wind from blowing it to the side to blowing it up, then riding the stream up to a higher platform. Still, it's a decent addition. The final power isn't shown in the trailer, so I'll keep it a secret. It's a pretty cool tool that lets you alter the layout of levels, but as with wind blowing, you can always do this in no pressure situations, so ultimately it amounts to little more than clicking. There are 12 levels in the game, but they're fairly short. A single run through will probably only last you about 3 hours, but considering the cost, that's a decent length, and hidden secrets, a hidden level and speedruns against times set by the developers give the game some good replay value for those interested in that sort of thing. It's in speedruns where the game really starts to shine, as things like moving wind become more frantic and less calculated, and it's a pity the regular gameplay didn't have something to give it that kind of fast pace. Visually it's really quite pretty, with the sand and the sky forming that perfect orange-blue colour contrast that makes everything stand out. The animations are adequate, but Nyx's limited range of moves means there just aren't many of them, and most of the enemies are limited to just moving back and forth. Given that there are only a couple of enemy types, and that they only come in black, there's not much visually to enjoy there, but they do at least stand out. Probably the biggest problem graphically is just how uniform it all is. While there are a few superficial changes, such as the evening sky being golden and the twilight sky being purple, the tile set is really quite uniform. You'll see the same assets like blocks and pillars used in every single level in the game. Although the game is short enough that this doesn't become frustrating, it is certainly more limited than what we've come to expect from our platformers. NyxQuest strikes a good balance between the old and the new, and a good balance in its difficulty between enabling the player and punishing their mistakes. Its limited visual style, and some of the mechanics not working as well as they obviously could, are marks against it, but the good far outweighs the bad. Anyone interested in platformers should definitely at least check out the demo.